Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today's is a good one. I have some really good tips for you today on a soft jerkbait, which is one of my favorite techniques. It seems to generate strikes when other baits cannot do it. And I'm telling you, for this time of year, it's a great technique. And it's one that if you're not using, guys, you might want to think about trying it. And if you are using it, you should still stay tuned because I've got 3 really good tips that will help generate more strikes, get your bait in the strike zone, and at the same time, save you a few bucks because as we know, this is a technique where you can go through a lot of soft jerk baits on a day when you're getting a lot of bites. So I've got some really good tips for you that I think you're going to want to stay tuned for. Before I get into that, I do want to remind you I'm starting to do one-on-one virtual lessons where you can have direct access to me for an hour-long session to ask me all the questions that you want to ask me. Maybe you're going on vacation to a new lake and would like to see how I'd break down that lake. Maybe you just want some input on your local lake. Whatever it is, guys, feel free to reach out. They're the virtual sessions. The link is in my video description so you can find out more about those as well. At the same time, if you want to support the channel in another manner, and you do some tackle shopping, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. It's a great way to show some support for the channel and very, very much appreciated. So thank you to those that are using it already. And guys, I'm telling you, the soft jerk bait is a bait that you need to be throwing because it generates a lot of strikes. When I say soft jerk bait, I'm talking about soft jerk baits like these. These are my 3 favorites. We've got here the Power Jerk Shad by Berkley. This is the Caffeine Shad by Strike King, and then we've got the Zoom Fluke by the Zoom Super Fluke by Zoom. 3 of my favorites. Now those are all very bright colored baits. I do tend to go with bright colored baits like these. I think you generate some really good aggressive strikes out of the fish. You trigger them to bite. It does something to them where if they're not in a good mood, it seems to generate those strikes and get the reaction strike. But there are times when I will throw a natural colored fluke style or soft jerk bait as well. But it's not necessarily the tip that I'm giving today. Although I will say that if you're fishing in smallmouth world, the siren colored caffeine shad is a killer. In the springtime when a methylate trick worm is working, you might want to try a methylate super fluke. And at the same time, you can't ever go wrong with just a straight pearl white colored power jerk shad. All of those are killer baits, but those aren't the tips. So the first tip I want to tell you has to do with the bait itself. Now we all know because when you're fishing a soft jerk bait, you're just twitching it through the water and it seems to be dancing side by side, does a little bit of walk the dog, shoots all over the place. The thing is, when you're working the bait, a lot of times we tend to really pull the nose of the bait down. So you'll get your bait back and it looks like that. And it just seems to not run correctly when that happens because at that point, it's not going to want to glide. It's going to want to shoot straight down. So when you've caught some fish or you've used your bait for a while, you tend to tear up this nose pretty good. And then you end up using more baits. Well, one of the best tips I can give you is to secure the nose into place. What I love to do is take a bobber stop, whether a new one or a used one, and I'll just slide it over the hook point and I'll slide that right up onto the bend of the hook. You can see I've got it right onto the bend of the hook, and that will lock that bait in. I can pull on this thing all day long and it just will not move. It like completely locks the baits in. I do that with most of my Texas rig baits at this point because it works that well. But you don't have to just do that. Another thing that a lot of people will do is they'll take a toothpick and they'll go right through the eye of the bait. And then you cut it off. You can see I'm all the way through it right there. And then they'll just cut it off so that it's flush. Now this works well this works well also. But the thing with this that I don't necessarily like is a lot of times people will push the toothpick, really try to jam it in the hook eye, and that's where your knot is. So you don't want to weaken your line or your knot. So you got to be careful if you do that. That does work phenomenally well though. That locks it in too. So in either case, you want to lock the nose down. It's a very important tip that will allow you to use less baits, but that also helps with your hookups, because sometimes what happens is when a fish bites it, if that nose slides down, which it's not because it's locked in place now, that'll all slide down and create a bunched up plastic ball right around the hook, which shrinks down the gap that allows you to hook the fish. So in my opinion, you're better off to try to mount it here so that when a fish bites it, it pushes everything down, and therefore you have more gap to hook that fish. So your hookup percentage increases and you're using up less baits. So that's the first tip. The second is, no matter how good we want a weedless soft jerkbait to be in terms of hookups, you still miss a lot of fish. And a lot of times it's because the fish are coming flying at the bait. They don't get the bait fully in their mouth. It just seems like it's not a great bait for hookups. Well, if you're fishing around open water, one thing that a lot of people will do is they'll just mount a treble hook off the belly of it. In this case, I just put a little plastic tubing over the hook eye, and then I'll slide that right down through. Let me slide that through. I'll put it right down through and then re-rig the bait. Just like that. And now I've got a belly weight, or a treble hook hanging off of the belly, which will really help with my hookup. So if you're fishing a place like Lake Murray or up here in the North Country where you've got smallies and you're just fishing a flat, you got no grass around, you got nothing to get stuck on, this is a great way to improve your hookup ratio. Now, one thing I do like to do with this is when I mount it, I like to have the rear treble hook facing up, and I can slide that right into the bait too. So I don't necessarily have as much of a dangling bait coming down, just like that. And it seems to generate, or it seems to really help with my hookups, and it allows the bait still to run pretty well in terms of, you know, the gliding motion. You don't lose anything out of the bait. So you've got here a fish catching tool that runs high up in the water column. So one of the concerns that I always have with this is, well, what happens when the fish are a little deeper and I can't get them to come up towards the surface to eat this? And in that, when that happens, you could go with a weighted EWG, or you could put a bullet weight in front of your line. But I have yet to find one that works and allows the bait still to glide as if it were a weighted bait. So what I've found that works the best in this case is I'll take nail weights, preferably tungsten ones, and you can slide them right back behind the head of the bait here. I'm just going to put it in there. I'll leave a little sticking out so you can see just a little sticking out. But I'll try to put the weight a little further back between, you know, the bend in the hook and the tip of the hook. And what that does is it allows this bait to have a little bit more weight, but still run vertical or horizontal in the water. You still get that really good gliding motion out of it versus having, say, a bullet weight in front of your line. Or some people will put a weight, they'll crimp a weight like 2 feet in front of the bait. It just seems like this is really a good way to weight the bait and maintain that same action out of it. So these are 3 very simple tips that you can do that will help the performance of the bait. Increase your hookups, get your bait running a little bit deeper, and save you a few bucks because you're not going to go through nearly as many. This is a technique that you should be using, and you can use it year round because it catches that many fish. It excels in the spring, excels in the summer, fall, winter. It's always a top bait to throw. So if you're not throwing a soft jerkbait, guys, you should think about grabbing some of these and giving them a try. And not only are they productive, they're a fun bait to use because a lot of times it's very visible and you see those strikes come. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned. Another video coming out tomorrow.